Hi there and welcome back again. Now, before we get stuck into setting any further global theme styles, I want to quickly make the case for using REM measurements instead of pixels in our project. I will say up front that if you just want to use pixels, that's absolutely fine. Throughout the course, I will mention the pixel values as well, even if I actually set sizes in REM. However, there are a few good reasons for generally using REM instead of pixels, so let me just take a few moments to explain why, so you can decide if you'll want to use REM too. There are basically two reasons. One, using REM is better for accessibility. Two, REM makes it easier to create nice looking proportional layouts. It reduces the number of decisions that you need to make when setting the size of anything. Let's hit accessibility first. You might already know that the problem with pixels is that they are an absolute measurement, not a relative one. This means that if we set the size of something in pixels, that can override a visitor's own web browsing preferences. An example, my friend Alison, she's a bit long-sighted and she always wants the text on websites to be a bit bigger. Most web browsers' default base text size is 16 pixels. So let's say Alison changes her browser's default size to say 18 pixels or 20 pixels instead of the default 16. So now, in theory, all the text and sizes on every site that she visits should be bigger proportionally. However, when we set sizes in pixels, we effectively override Alison's own preferences because pixels aren't a relative measurement. They are absolute. Now, sure, I know that browsers have a very good zoom feature these days, which proportionally scales the text and the rest of the layout anyway. Yes, but we're still overriding our user's browser preference, which is not cool. And anyway, not all devices that a visitor might use to visit our sites have that scalable zoom feature. So the answer is to use REM instead of pixels. It's a very simple concept actually. 1 REM is equal to your visitor's browser size setting. So by default, most web browsers' default text size is 16 pixels. Not all, but most. That means we can reasonably assume 1 REM equals 16 pixels for working purposes. So if we set our body copy size to 1 REM, it'll display at 16 pixels. If we set our H3 headings at 2 REM, they'll display at 32 pixels. 2 times 16 is 32. And if we set our section padding at 5 REM, well, that will be 80 pixels. 5 times 16 is 80. Don't worry about the calculations for now. Just focus on what this means for scalability and accessibility. So if a visitor changes their base browser text size to 20 pixels instead of the usual 16, then 1 REM for that visitor is now 20 pixels. Now our entire website will scale accordingly. So our body copy, which we've still just set at 1 REM, will now be 20 pixels for them. And like our H3 headings, still 2 REM, will now display at 2 times 20, which is 40 pixels. You hopefully get the idea. Everything scales proportionally and beautifully, respecting each user's own browsing preferences. It's the right thing to do. And using REM for sizes also makes it easier to create nice looking layouts easily, reducing the amount of numbers that we have to decide from when choosing any sizes. I'm going to talk more later about this, but for now, let me just say that we'll be using what's called an 8-point grid for our layouts, which, as the name suggests, uses multiples of 8 for its sizes. What this means is, if we use increments of 0.5 REM, remember 0.5 REM, half a REM is 8 pixels, then we automatically are going to use the 8 times table. 0.5 REM is 8, 1 REM is 16, 1.5 REM is 24, 2 REM is 32, 2.5 REM is 40. See? It's really easy to work in the 8 times table. Again, for now, don't worry about the specifics of this because we're going to come back to it in more detail later, but I just want you to trust for now that working with REM makes everything better for all our visitors, and it makes life easier for us as designers too. Sure, if you've always worked in pixels, REM takes a little bit of getting used to, like anything in life that's new. Once you get your head around it, you won't look back. However, if you want no truck with this REM thing whatsoever, or it's just too much to take on board right now, just ignore it. Use pixels. I'll be mentioning pixel values as well as REM as we go. Next, let's get on and set up our global typography. See you in a second.